Welcome back to the Road to City Hall, where we are focusing much of our show today on veterans issues. Before the break, we discussed the de Blasio administration's record on helping veterans. We're going to continue that discussion now and turn to the impact that the wars in Afghanistan and Iraq in particular have had on former service members, especially those who struggle with finding adequate medical care, steady employment, mental health services, and affordable housing. We've got a special panel here to join me in this discussion. Michael Lennington is the CEO of the Wounded Warrior Project. Christian Rouse is the president and founder of the New York City Veterans Alliance. And Jeremy Butler is the senior military fellow at Iraq and Afghanistan Veterans of America. Welcome to all of you. Thanks for coming in. And let me start with you, Jeremy. You had a big gala last night. I hope you raised a lot of money for your organization.
We did.
How do things stand at this point?
Well, I'd say it's a mixed bag. There's a lot of good things going on, and what we were trying to focus on yesterday was the steps forward that we still need to take. There's been some good thing that's been done here locally. Raising the mayor's office of Veterans Affairs up to a department was a huge good step, but there's still a lot that needs to be done locally and nationally, and I'd be happy to go into details here in a bit, but yeah, there's still work to be done.
General, we literally don't have time to list all of the different things that you've done. You've served in almost every capacity I can imagine.
Thank you very much.
Among other things, you were the cadets commandant at West Point.
I was.
So you've trained people.
Army's having a good year this year.
And you've served in Kabul, Afghanistan. Where do things stand with services for returning service members? Whenever I see the ads for the Wounded Warrior, and I've been to some of the events, I wonder to myself, how is it that there's this basic gap between what people need when they come home and what's available to them through the government? Why basically do we need the Wounded Warrior?
It's a great question, and we're not trying to be the VA or fill in for do what the government does. We can't do that. Where we do, as you mentioned, is fill in the gaps, primarily in 4 areas: engaging warriors with each other, providing them opportunities to get access to mental health care help if they can't get it from the government. Physical health and wellness is a particular emphasis of ours right now. This population of warriors is aging. Getting them back physical and able is important. And then lastly, as I know we'll talk about, economic empowerment, jobs, having them be able to provide for themselves, their families, and be role models and leaders in their community.
And Kristen, this is allegedly, economically speaking, supposed to be a good time, especially in New York City, that we've never had higher levels of employment, tourism. It's supposed to be a good time. How are things for veterans?
Well, so we hear from veterans and their family members on 3 top issues that that definitely echo what everybody else is talking about. We hear from them on housing stability, which includes anything from homelessness to trouble using the VA home loan here in New York City, and we also hear from them on employment-related issues, needing jobs and opportunities in the workplace, and then also on access to mental health care and suicide prevention. Like, those are the top 3 issues that we hear from veterans and families on. Yeah. And when we first got started a couple years ago as the New York City Veterans Alliance, we brought in members of the community, veterans, family members, service providers, and brainstormed like what are the issues and what are the solutions that we need to look at. And we heard on those top 3 issues, but we also heard about discrimination that was happening here locally. We heard about landlords denying housing to veterans and their families because of disability issues, or because they didn't recognize VA disability payments or GI Bill educational benefits as the legitimate income that it is. We also heard from veterans and currently serving military members and reservists that they were being denied employment because of either perceived mental health issues related to military service, just assumptions about their if they listed their military status or their military service on their resume. Some of the veterans who are our members do not list their military service on their resumes because they fear that discrimination, whether it be like political, sort of a political overlay, or assumptions about mental health care, and also reservists. Like 40% of our U.S. Armed Forces right now are in reserve, and Reserve and National Guard members have been actively engaged in our in our 16 years of war that we've had, and often we hear from reservists and National Guard that an employer will ask them, oh well, you're not going to have to deploy, are you? And that's actually not a legal question.
I was going to say that doesn't even
Right,
sound proper right off the bat.
And so they're not getting the same access to employment opportunities because of that.
But now some of this, Jeremy, has got to be based on ignorance, right? I mean, when I was coming up, and I occasionally worked alongside veterans, and I mean, the rep that they had was that, well, they were getting up at 5 o'clock in the morning for the last 5 or 6 years, so they're going to be on time, and they understand chain of command at a bare minimum. Is that no longer the case? I mean, where's this discrimination coming from?
Well, I think you nailed it. It's ignorance. A lot of people, I mean, we're at a point in this country's history where such a small percentage of the country has served, or even has a family member that has served, that you really don't know what it's like to be a service member, because you just don't have that direct connections to it. And so I think ignorance is still a really big part of it. To sort of echo what Kristen was saying and what she's found locally, it 100% reflects what we've seen nationally. We at IAVA do an annual member survey, and we found that the same problems are the top 3 issues that our members report at a national level across the board. And personally, I'm still in the Navy Reserves and do the same thing. When I've applied for jobs in the past, I always have that consideration of, do I mention the fact that I'm in the reserves on my resume or not? Because you just don't know necessarily, unless you have a good understanding of that company, how they're going to react to that.
I remember a number of public service ads, this is maybe just dating myself, but they used to sort of put out PSAs saying, there's veterans here, you should take advantage of them, just as a general service announcement to the public. And now, General, I know your organization did a survey as well, and I saw that by far, I guess it was a survey about 100,000 people, that
95,000 with almost a 40% response rate, which to me, 158 questions, 40% response rate. I would have loved to have had that kind of response rate in the DOD when we did surveys, but this survey showed that our veterans, again, we're talking about the most seriously, we're the Wounded Warrior Project, so 108,000 wounded, ill, and injured service members and their families. Their issues are more access and quality of the mental health care that the VA provides. We fill in the gaps for that with some of unique programs that are really showing promising results. Again, the physical health and wellness, and then opportunities to get jobs. 16% unemployment among the veterans we serve. These are very qualified, capable leaders that have developed those skill sets over years in the military. So giving them the opportunity to serve in another capacity after they transition to civilian status, I just ask all the employers that are watching tonight, give the veteran a chance. Well, yeah, they'll be very, very surprised.
And talk a little bit about the training that people get. I mean, this is not just somebody walking in off the street, right? I mean,
no, I mean, as you said, it's the values and skills and discipline that comes with being a service member, regardless of the service. And then as you work your way up the ranks, the increased levels of responsibility you get, where you're responsible for people, equipment, budgets, and then in deployment, lives, and filling out what, performing the acts our nation have asked you to do. So I just ask all the employers that are watching tonight, hire a veteran. It's very important, and they'll be paid back 3 times over whatever investments they make in bringing that veteran on board.
We have, I think, going into effect in just a couple of days, sort of a new category, or we're going to sort of make it real for human rights complaints based on veteran status. You can now go, and it's a protected category, the way race, gender, nationality, and national origin, others would kick in. It's a shame in a way that it's necessary, but do you expect to see your members take advantage of it?
I sure hope so. So we had a number of our members who, so it was the New York City Veterans Alliance members themselves who originated that legislation. So, we worked with Public Advocate Tish James and Councilman Jumaane Williams, who introduced the bill to City Council. It passed unanimously last June, and it's about to go into effect on November 18th. We're really proud of that. We had a number of our members who told their stories to City Council members to really make the case for why this was important. There are federal protections, there are state protections, but we needed the city to put this into law, that you cannot discriminate against veterans and service members, to include reservists, in housing, in employment, in lending, in other aspects of life. And so New Yorkers are protected for, so many categories of a person are protected in New York, and that's what makes New York City great. But now we've added veteran and military status to New York City.
Even in a city where, like most of the rest of the curve, don't necessarily personally have relatives or others and may not be connected in that way to the experience of veterans, over time you start to acquire a certain amount of political clout. I mean, getting the mayor's office of Veterans Affairs institutionalized was quite a victory. This is a legislative victory. Mm-hmm. Can we expect to see more political activity?
Oh, absolutely, 100%. I mean, that's what we are focused on, is trying to do that. And I'm glad you led off the question the way you did, in that we always say that veterans, are one of the three things that every politician will mention, veterans, babies, and puppies, because they always get an applause line and everyone's for them. Mm-hmm. But what we say is, push the politicians beyond that. Don't let them get away with just a polite phrase of that. Push them once they're in office to make sure that they are making change. One of the big things we're pushing right now is our She Who Borne the Battle campaign, which is to change the landscape in America for women veterans. Because sort of going along with the way there's a lot of discrimination within the community, a lot of people overlook the fact that women are an increasingly large percentage of our veteran population. Mm-hmm. They're in every combat arms nowadays, and they're out there on the front lines day in, day out. But often when you, walk in the VA, you see a sign that has a motto that says, "For he who has borne the battle." So right off the bat, you're sowing a motto that discriminates against a large portion of the military. But then a lot of times when that female veteran goes in, they're often asked, "Oh, are you here for your husband? Are you here for your spouse?" Something like that. Yes. They don't make the assumption that you're a veteran as well.
Okay. Well, when you're ready with policy or legislation, come back here because we want to hear more about it. Thank you so much for coming in. I hope everybody has a great time at the parade tomorrow, and we will talk again, not just next year, but before then. We want to hear from you. Let's take a short break here. Straight ahead in our Friday Reporters Roundtable, we will look at Bill de Blasio's big win on election night and reflect on what his term might look like. Stay with us. Stay here. We're still on here.